And welcome back to Attorneys on Call. You know, if you think you might need an attorney, great place to start is on the website, whitleylawfirm.com, or you can call the 800 number that's on your screen. And by the way, we have operators standing by right now. You can call during this program or at a time that's convenient for you, and you will get a call back and you will be able to speak with one of our attorneys. Back in studio with Bob Whitley and Whitney Butcher. Whitney, before we took that little break, we were talking about two different things. Physio mesh, that is used for hernia surgeries, right? And then Invokana, which is a type 2 diabetes drug. Let's talk about Physio Mesh first. And where are the problems here with this? Because a lot of people have hernia surgeries, right? I mean, I think you were saying earlier that, what, 500,000 people have a hernia surgery every year?
That's right. About 500,000 hernia repair surgeries in the abdominal area. And that's really what we're talking about here, Drew. It's laparoscopic hernia repair using a polypropylene mesh. The one that's most prominently used is the Physio Mesh.
Okay, that's kind of the brand name, or that's
a brand name.
A brand
it's
name.
manufactured by Ethicon. There are a couple of different ones. C-Cure is another one. But basically, the polypropylene hernia mesh. And the issue is something we saw a couple years ago with the transvaginal mesh cases. When it comes into contact with human tissue, it starts to become intertwined and can cause some really serious complications. Folks that I've talked to recently are having to have additional revision surgeries where they try to go in and remove the mesh, even though they were told this was supposed to be a permanent repair for the hernia.
Thing. Okay. And so give us a sample of some of these problems that people are having. I know you mentioned that it's painful, but it can lead to really bad things.
That's right. So recurrence of the hernia, worsening of the hernia, severe infections, sepsis even, bowel obstruction if the intestines are really impacted. There are a lot of different ways that if the hernia mesh doesn't do its job and contain the hernia, this can cause real serious problems for folks.
Now, is this product still on the market? Are they still using this?
So it was actually recalled voluntarily by the company back earlier in 2016. There were 2 hernia registries which were compiled throughout Europe, and they were showing much higher than normal failure rates and revision rates for the Physio Mesh.
Okay.
So the company voluntarily recalled it, and there are a couple of lawsuits filed across the country about this to date.
You said that was Ethicon. That's a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, correct?
That's right.
Okay. So if people that are watching the program right now, and they had a hernia surgery, let's say in the last year or two, and they're starting to have some issues or some problems, obviously, first call your doctor, but do they have a case? How do you know if you have a case in this situation?
Well, as we were saying earlier, it's absolutely free to give me a call. The most important thing we want to do is find out what type of mesh was used. And we can do that by ordering the implant stickers and the medical records from the hernia surgery. That's not too big of a deal. But it's important if you're going in for a revision surgery or you're going in to talk about scheduling surgery to try and remove part of it, to talk to an attorney first of all, because that can be one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in the case, is actually saving the pieces of the mesh that they're able to remove.
So my question too is, how do these things, if they become dangerous like this, why does the FDA approve them? And how does it get through the FDA approval process? Or, you know, is it the company that's somehow sliding this through, that it gets approval, and then a year or two later, they figure out that this is dangerous?
Well, the Physio Mesh specifically was approved through the FDA's 510K approval process for medical devices. So what that means is Ethicon was able to get the Physio Mesh approved without ever conducting any clinical trials by showing that the Physio Mesh was substantially similar to a prior model or a prior type of mesh.
Wait a minute, no trials?
No clinical trials in humans. There were some animal studies and testing that were done, but when this was approved in 2010 and then marketed later that year, there had not been any human clinical trials involving it. So that's why you start to see over the course of 6 years all these adverse event reports.
Okay.
The registries in Europe starting to note all these different side effects from the hernia mesh causing some real severe complications.
So I'm assuming that the doctors that are doing these surgeries are they're following their procedures that the pharmaceutical company is telling them, right? That this is what you do in this situation. So I would assume those doctors have to be just as upset.
That's right, and that's another great point, Drew. These are not cases against physicians or hospitals. These are cases against the manufacturer, Ethicon, and then several other manufacturers of a type of hernia mesh made of polypropylene that's causing these severe side effects. So the doctors really didn't know at the time they were using it that the complications were likely.
So if Tom, who lives in Greenville, had a surgery a couple of years ago for a hernia, can he call his doctor and say, did I have a physio mesh implanted in me, or what does he do?
Sure, he can. The most efficient thing is probably, honestly, if you have a hernia mesh, you had hernia repair surgery, and you're having stomach pain, recurrence of the hernia, you're having some issues like that, I would go ahead, make an appointment to see your doctor, but into the specifics, I think it's important to go ahead and call an attorney, because we would be able to pretty quickly and easily find out what type they had, whether it's one of the ones we're concerned about, and whether they may have a case.
Bob, is this something that you've been working on for many years with your firm, and that I've heard you say this before, that a lot of times these companies put profits before people?
They do. They're making so much money, these pharmaceutical companies, on a product like that, that they're not taking the time and expending the money that's necessary, like in this example, for tests. Now, Whitney, I do think it's important to point out that if you've had hernia surgery, it doesn't mean you automatically have one of these bad products.
Okay.
No, that's a great point. Hernia surgeries are extremely common, and they've been done for years and years with no issue and no fault. It's this specific polypropylene type of mesh that has the same issue as the transvaginal mesh. It can become embedded in the intestines and the tissue in the body, and that's really what we're concerned about. But it's certainly not everyone who's had hernia repair surgery is going to be impacted by this.
Let's talk about Invokana, the type 2 diabetes drug, because type 2 diabetes, I mean, everybody knows someone who has it, or you might have it. You're watching the program right now. What is going on with Invokana?
So Invokana is a part of the newest class of diabetes medications. It's an SLG2 inhibitor. Talk about profits, it's a billion with a B, billion-dollar drug for Janssen Pharmaceuticals, another entity under the Johnson & Johnson brand. And basically, it disrupts the way the body processes glucose and can have some severe side effects, including diabetic ketoacidosis, myocardial infarction, and then kidney failure. So
Kidney failure?
Kidney failure, yep, and acute kidney injury. So it has a couple of severe side effects, and it's a new, I'm sure folks have seen the ads for it.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Similar to Xarelto.
They're all over.
Yep, that's right.
And once again, folks, at any time, you can call the 800 number on your screen. We do have operators standing by live, and you can also go to whitleylawfirm.com, which is a great first step as well. So we see these ads all the time, and we know they're out there, and I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this program right now that are taking Invokana. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, talking about the way that the hernia mesh was approved, Invokana was approved through clinical trials, but we're only now learning about some of the side effects that are associated with it. So the FDA came out in 2015 and required the manufacturer to update the warning label to warn about diabetic ketoacidosis. So since the medication interferes with the body's absorption of glucose, it starts to use muscle and fat to break down for energy, and that can cause too much acid to be released. And diabetic ketoacidosis is a very life-threatening injury. So the FDA said, Janssen, update your warning label, include this warning so patients know about it. Then this past year in 2016, the FDA again said, Janssen, update your warning label to include this risk of acute injury failure, of acute kidney failure.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a serious thing right there. I mean, your kidney shuts down. I mean, that's life-threatening, right?
That's right. That's right.
Obviously, people can call the 800 number. They can go to whitleylawfirm.com. And if they call you because they're either taking this drug or they have a family member or friend that is, what will you tell them?
We'll do everything that we can to help. There's no fee to see if we can help. There's no fee unless there's ultimately some recovery. So I met with a gentleman a few weeks ago, back to the hernia mesh, who's a cook at a really nice restaurant in town. And he's putting off his revision surgery until the last date possible because he can't afford to be out of work. So I was able to sit down with him and listen to what he had to say, tell him we were going to do everything we could to help him, and give him hopefully a little bit of a peace of mind about the process going forward, and that there may be some recourse for him.
And once again, that's a free consultation.
That's right.
Okay, very good. Well, coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to actually go to trial in one of these cases, because many are settled out of court, but not all are. And you're going to learn more about that in just a moment. Back in Attorneys on Call here in just a minute.